Steve Kerr is brought to you by the Next Generation 10G Network, only from Xfinity. The future starts now, and so does our conversation with the great Steve Kerr. Hey, Coach, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing fine, man. You know, licking wounds a little bit, of course, but at the same time, Game 7 energy versus Game 1 energy. How would you sort of put it into words, the emotions of taking the first punch in a series like this?
Well, it's we've been through so many of these series over the years, and I've been through them as a player and as a coach. There's a different feeling from one game to the next, and I think Game 1 is always a feeling out process. You're trying to get a sense for what the other team is doing. You're getting a sense for what your own how your own game plan is faring. There's definitely less sort of urgency than there is in a Game 7 for obvious reasons, and yet it's still a playoff game. Like, you're still on edge. You're still really desperately trying to win the game. So there's always an interesting sort of vibe around the different games within a series, and last night felt like an opening game to me. Just a lot of just sort of trying to get a sense for each other.
It felt almost like 2 games in one, Coach, because you fell down by 12 or 14 with 6 minutes to go, and then all of a sudden a burst and a rally and a change of lineup, and you got back in it, and Jordan Poole with a look to tie it up. Did you feel like maybe you discovered something late in that fourth quarter, or was it just as simple as you guys had freshness on your side?
Well, I do think we had some freshness. They played their starters basically the whole fourth. Actually, not their starters, but their best defensive team the whole fourth. And I thought in the last 3 or 4 minutes we had more energy than they did, and spreading the floor made them have to guard more court, and then our guys did a great job of knocking down some shots and getting back in it. But it's just it's one game. Every game feels a little bit different. Think about Game 6 of the Sacramento series versus Game 7. We look like 2 entirely different teams, and so I don't think you can just take those last few minutes and say, well, that's how the rest of this series is going to look. I think there are always extenuating circumstances.
Steve Kerr with us here on Willard and Dibs. Coach, would you take us through the whole picture, all of the angles of the final shot? We know that you said last night that you liked the shot from Jordan Poole, but also just wonder what goes through your mind the moment you get the rebound. Is there a consideration of a timeout? Are you thinking about drawing up a play? Take us through the whole picture from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is the clock, and is there enough time to take the ball down and get a decent look? So we had plenty of time, and then the next thing is to see how it unfolds. If something happens and we're in a bad spot, that's where I can race out onto the court and yell timeout. And in this case, our offense is at the other end, so you don't always get that timeout because the refs may not see it or see me. But what I was looking at was Steph got double teamed at half court, and I knew somebody was going to be open on the weak side, so I didn't want to take a timeout. And Steph made the right play, got it to Draymond, and as I said, I love the fact that Jordan took that shot. I think looking at the film, the only thing he could have done is just move closer to the line before the ball got to him. I didn't think the spacing was perfect. I loved his confidence and his willingness to step up and try to knock that thing down. But he could have been a little closer to the line, made it a slightly easier shot for sure.
Is time of game remaining the prevailing factor in not going for a 2 there and playing the foul game? Were you in a spot with 10 seconds left that you felt like a 3 to tie was the best route for them to take?
Well, I think there's plenty of time for a quick 2 if you want one. It's there, and it's just up to to the players to read that. If you're down in the final seconds, obviously you have to go ahead and take the three. But when you have timeouts left and you've got time on the clock, then I'm fine going in for a quick two as well.
Coach Steve Kerr with us here on Willard and Dibs at 95.7 The Game. I tell you what, bunch of interesting stuff here to get to. I wonder what you thought of Steph Curry's game. It looked like he was maybe having a little bit more success kind of with the ball in his hands as opposed to what he always does off ball. Jared Vanderbilt gave him some trouble. What did you see in that particular matchup?
Well, I think right away you could see that both Vanderbilt and Schroeder, when he came into the game, were trying to deny the ball to Steph full court. So when they scored, those guys raced up and tried to keep the ball out of Steph's hands from the beginning of the possession. And the thinking is obvious. Without Steph bringing the ball to the floor, it just limits the damage he can do. And it's a smart strategy, and we just have to decide, how we want to combat that. There are ways to get him open. He can be more forceful in demanding the ball. You can also just embrace it or accept it and bring him off a screen at the other end. And so those are all things, as I said, where you watch game one, you get a feel for what the other team's doing, and you make some adjustments.
Is part of the adjustment maybe activating Anthony Davis in more pick and rolls away from the basket? Mark and I were having this discussion, and, Coach, it felt to me like he was camping in there defensively, yet no defensive three in the key calls. Is that something maybe you want me to call the league office on, or something that you'll handle yourself?
Yeah, there generally aren't going to be a lot of those called, in the playoffs, and he was definitely camped in there, and there were definitely plays where he could have been called for it. But that's if that's the way it's going to be played, then we can do the same thing at the other end and crowd the paint, and we did our share of that. But yeah, that's one way of trying to pull him away from the hoop is to put him in more high screen and roll, and that's something we will definitely look at. And there are other ways to engage him as well. But you give him credit. He was amazing. He had a great game, and controlled the game defensively, and also scored, made a lot of tough shots. So sometimes you just you pat a guy in the back, say great game, and then you go try to be more aggressive, more forceful the next game, and try to take him out of some of that stuff.
Steve, I've heard you use the word adjustments a couple of times, and I'm sure you know this. It feels, in this particular case, to some Warrior fans, a little intimidating because it feels like the adjustment you need to do is to get taller, and the team obviously can't do that. So how do you battle their size with adjustments?
Well, I mean, I always say this every year. The first adjustment is the emotional one. You got to come in, especially coming off a loss, with the idea that you're going to be the more aggressive team. You're going to be the team that is playing with force and going after every loose ball, every rebound. And you say, well, shouldn't you do that every game? Yeah, but look, these guys are all professional athletes, best basketball players on earth. Everyone out there is gifted, and when you play with a sense of desperation, you get a few more of those loose balls, a few more of those rebounds. Things tend to turn your way, and I think that's always the first adjustment in any series. And then after that, it's little stuff. It's matchups. Who do we want guarding whom? What's our rotation look like? Maybe you tweak your pick and roll coverage. And those are all the things that you pick apart on film, and then you go through and walk through, and then you implement them for the next game.
Draymond Green picks up his third in the second quarter, and that's it. He's got to go to the bench, and he doesn't get any more time until after the half. Is it tough with a player like Draymond, especially where you know that he is such a smart player that you want to leave him out there, yet 3 fouls, you feel like you need to protect him?
Yeah, and I think every situation is different. I usually leave our best players out on the floor when they're in foul trouble because my philosophy is always, I'd rather have them playing because if they're sitting, they're not impacting the game anyway. But you take everything into account, and one of those things is that the Lakers do have a lot of size, and if Draymond's out there guarding Davis or LeBron, he's more likely to get a fourth. And on top of that, it's a close game, and we're fine, and no need to panic and keep him out there. So we felt fine with the foul situation. Draymond went in at halftime with the 3, but it was I think we were down 1 or 2 points, and we were in a good spot, so there was no harm done.
Steve, also, while we talk about adjustments in personnel, is there any chance that Jonathan Kaminga might be one of those adjustments on some level to give you a little bit more size and athleticism?
Yeah, I think, the whole thing with all of our players, and I tell them this all the time, is the playoffs change dramatically, from game to game based on matchups, based on injuries, based on, what you're seeing on film. And it's important for everybody on the team to stay ready. And I think JaMychal Green is a great example of that, hardly played against Sacramento. And we knew we would need some size against the Lakers and some shooting. And he gets out there last night and gives us a great 7 or 8 minutes in the first half, knocks down a couple threes. So, J-Mike understands that. And, the other guys need to understand that too, whether it's Kaminga, Lamb, all these guys, there's a possibility that things could turn their way, and they just have to stay ready.
Dante has been getting playing time, DiVincenzo, but just 1 shot in 12 minutes. It seems to the naked eye like maybe he's struggling with some shot confidence. Where is he right now from an offensive standpoint in terms of trying to recapture what he was more like earlier in the year?
Well, it's harder to do in shorter minutes, but this is kind of what the playoffs are about. The rotations sort of go out the window, and you just sort of, take the game possession by possession, and whatever's needed, you put the guys out there that are needed. I think what Dante brings us is an aggressive on-ball defender and another ball-handling decision maker, which is really important, given that they're trying to take Steph out of the game, take Jordan out of the game. It's great to have Dante as a secondary ball handler. He can initiate our offense. He can, he can knock down shots on the receiving end of plays, and he'll do that. He's just not going to get as many shots as if he were, starting and playing 30 minutes like he was most of the second half of the season.
Steve, now that Darvin Ham has tipped his hand and shown you that he's going to guard Jordan Poole in this series, which Laker are you going to guard?
Yeah, it is interesting. We watched Mike Brown spend a lot of time on the court during the Sacramento series. It seems to be a league-wide thing. Coaches just joining the action. So I don't know if the NBA has any problem with it, but I suppose I should start getting out onto the floor more too.
You more of a traditional offensive player. Might they let you go 6-on-5 on the offensive end?
I'm open, guys. Throw me the ball.
No doubt. While we're in this space of obtuse things, Dennis Schroeder and the Academy gives him the Oscar. What do you do when you see such a blatant flop when you have these discussions with the referees?
I just try to point out, that's what I did last night. I pointed out to the officials that there was some flopping going on. And honestly, I really like playoff officiating because for the most part, the league and the officials just eliminate a lot of the BS that goes on in the regular season where players are trying to manipulate the officials and sell calls. And when you watch games in the playoffs, most of that stuff is not being called. And so I love it. I thought there were some called last night. I thought the Lakers showed some gamesmanship and the refs fell for some of that stuff. And it's a little disappointing, but that's all part of it. And after every game, the people are going to be upset with this or that or the officiating or whatever. And I will say I don't think that was the reason for the outcome. I think the Lakers outplayed us and deserved to win, but I would hope that a lot of the flopping will go away as the series goes on.
Yeah, well said. It just was a little unsightly. Just one more while we're in the sphere. It looked like Ed Malloy and you and Draymond were having a nice conversation, and all of a sudden Ed tees up Draymond. What happened to where Ed suddenly got fed up? I thought it was a nice exchange of ideas among three grown men.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Draymond may have said the magic word or somewhere. It was looking at the replay. It was unfortunate because they set an illegal screen. Draymond was trying to fight through it. Schroeder hooked his arm, and so Draymond had every right to be upset, and it was a tough call. But like I said, that happens, and it's Draymond's going to have to be aware of his technical foul count and all that stuff because he's got a reputation. In case you guys hadn't noticed.
I noticed it.
Yeah, that was wild last night. Steve Kerr with us here on Willard and Dibs after the Warriors fall to the Lakers and go down 1-0 in the series. Steve, GP2 was on with us earlier. 3 times in the conversation, he used the phrase "muck it up." Is it safe to say that you guys feel the physicality needs to be ramped up on your end tomorrow night?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's part of what I was saying earlier, just, playing with force, playing with energy, being the more desperate team, all that stuff. And like I said, this is not rocket science. This is, nothing new. This has been going on for as long as I've ever, been part of the NBA, and every series I've ever been part of. It's, if you lose, you got to come back with force, and you got to play harder. Those are the first adjustments to make. Play harder, get more rebounds, get more loose balls, box out, do all that stuff, and do all that with energy, and it puts you in a much better position to win.
Seemed like against Sacramento, you started to, I don't want to say avoid Davion Mitchell guarding Steph, but the minute matchup was such that Mitchell wasn't out there as much against Steph. Have you thought about that already in terms of Jared Vanderbilt, who seemed to give Steph Curry some issues at times last night?
No, not really. I mean, they're trading Vanderbilt and Schroeder onto Steph. Both guys are spending time on him, and they're both good defenders. And look, the Lakers, after the trade deadline, when they made their moves, they had the number 1 defense in the league. So we are prepared for what the Lakers are bringing. They've got an excellent defensive team, a lot of experience, a lot of IQ. So it's a great challenge. And we just have to continue down the path we're on and keep making the subtle game-to-game adjustments and just get after it and bring the emotion, bring the energy, and we'll get back in it.
Steve, as you know, everybody's always got a lot of eyes on the minute count for all the players, and whether there are Kaminga questions or even the guys who are playing a lot. At the end of the Sacramento series, your top players are bleeding into the 40-plus minute area. Last night, everybody's back down to Steph at 38, but nobody was up at that 40-minute mark. Is that just because it's early in the series and you want to ease your way into it, or do things now immediately get a little bit more in that desperate realm because you're down 0-1?
I think Game 1, coming off of a Game 7, an emotional Game 7, 48 hours earlier, for sure, in Game 1, you want to get more people out there, and you don't want to run everybody into the ground. And so there's that consideration. And then, the feeling out process that I referenced, you want to give different people some looks just to see, how those players present themselves in the series. And then as you go, you tend to pare things down a little bit.
Steve, obviously one of the best games, if not the best game in the playoffs for Jordan Poole so far last night. Would love to get your thoughts on whether or not you think this is a better matchup for him, and just in general, where you think he mentally is kind of standing in this run.
Yeah, I loved Jordan's game last night. I loved his approach. He's pretty mentally tough. I mean, Jordan is a guy who, you guys know, I mean, he's a little bit of a lightning rod. A lot of people are judging him on a daily basis, and it's not easy as a young player, a young person to have that type of scrutiny with your every move. And the way he responded last night, knocking down shots, competing, boxing out, fighting over screens, I thought Jordan was great. And like I said, every game's different. You never know how things are going to play out, but we do know we'll need Jordan to be aggressive, and I have great faith in him.
Steve, well, history is not on the side of teams that lose the first two at home.
Man.
I know that you're probably not going to put a label on it to the guys, but I guess I'll just ask you, how would you characterize tomorrow night's game?
It's game 2.
Okay, that's it.
I love it.
It's game 2. You guys get to label all the other stuff. We just take it a game at a time.
I called Game 7 a double must win, Steve, in case you need that.
Double
if it goes, yeah, it's not a must, it's double must win. So if this goes 7, there's another freebie from Dibs to Kerr.
Thank you. I'll use that with the squad.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Perfect. If we get to Mother's Day, of course.
Oh, God.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Steve, thank you as always. Great stuff.
Fun being on with you guys. Take care.
Okay,
Thanks, Steve.
There he goes. Steve Kerr, the
I
head
give
coach
and I give.
of the Wings. You do.